Leader of the UKIP group, Neil Hamilton.
I'd like to wish the First Minister happy birthday as well, and to assure him that as you get older, there's nothing to fear as long as you remain in rude health like me. The First Minister will agree. The First Minister will agree, I'm sure, whatever our differing views on Brexit, uncertainty is to be deprecated, and the Prime Minister at least is about to resolve one uncertainty by triggering Article 50. It's regrettable, though, that Nicola Sturgeon has now sought to create another uncertainty over a referendum in Scotland, no doubt confident that the Prime Minister would refuse her request. I wonder if the First Minister would agree with me the best way to reduce this particular uncertainty is to call Nicola Sturgeon's bluff and hold a referendum.
Well, first things first, I should thank the leader of UKIP and indeed the leader of the Welsh Conservatives for their good wishes from different perspectives, indeed, in that regard. But my view is, and I've said this publicly, that if the Scottish Parliament votes to hold a referendum, the UK government should not stand in the way of the Scottish Parliament any more than the European Commission or Parliament should have stood in the way of the UK holding a referendum on Brexit. And I think it's right that if the Scottish Parliament supports a referendum and looks for a particular date, that the views of the Scottish Parliament should be respected.
Well, I'm glad to hear the First Minister say that, because I agree with him. That it is rarely wrong to consult the people on a major issue of this kind. And if there were to be a referendum campaign, it would also have some relevance for Wales, because Scotland has a budget deficit of 15 billion a year, although it's a larger economy than Wales. It's much the same figure as we have here, 15 billion deficit. And that is effectively a transfer of funds from one part of the UK to another, which would disappear if either Scotland or Wales became politically independent.
Well, it is not my view that independence is in Wales's interests. I'm aware of the substantial financial transfers that take place, that come into Wales, which is why I'm a strong devolutionist, but not somebody who supports independence.
And it's very important, I think, all of us who believe in the integrity of the United Kingdom should remain united on this point, that actually Wales would be vastly poorer if it left the United Kingdom, because there is no way that any cut in any budget by a UK department, which would be subsequently devolved to Wales, could possibly be compensated for in any other way. And therefore, because public expenditure is now nearly 60% of the Welsh GDP, there would be a massive hit for all poor and vulnerable people and all those who rely upon the National Health Service and other social services for their health and well-being.
The case for independence by those who make it in Wales is built not on the economy, to my mind, but on emotion. What we must guard against, from my perspective, is that the emotional case doesn't overwhelm the economic one, which is why it's hugely important that when the UK leaves the EU, that we have in place a structure that reflects a proper partnership of 4 nations within the UK, that it's not a case of the UK government imposing its will in devolved areas on the devolved governments, and we also have an independent adjudication process for policing the rules of the internal single market of the UK. I believe that's the way forward. Respect for the 4 national identities within the UK, as well as other identities within the UK, and that, for me, would represent for Wales a very good outcome. But my worry is the UK government, I mentioned, I did say that the 10-year, although the meeting yesterday was better, I have to say, than any we've had in the past. It is hugely important the UK government itself doesn't create the conditions where people feel annoyed enough to take the view that actually they don't believe the UK is worth preserving. That is not something I'd want to see.